I'm Jeff DeBelko in the Environmental Change Security Program here at the Woodrow Wilson Center. Very fortunate to have Aaron Wolf, Professor of Geosciences at Oregon State University, a geographer, longtime friend of the program. So it's terrific, Aaron, to have you here. I want to ask you about the kind of two worlds of research and practice that you are bringing together. On one hand, water conflict and cooperation, and long focus of that for you and your freshwater, transboundary freshwater dispute database, trying to understand those dynamics, but also more recently spending a lot of time on spirituality and understanding how that might help us understand and be a part of environmental negotiation or negotiations more broadly. You've mentioned an enlightenment rift. Can you talk about what you mean by that and how that helps you bring these two worlds together?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. During the Enlightenment, during the European Enlightenment, we basically separated out the worlds of rationality and spirituality. And we in the West and in North America and in Europe, we decided that we would focus on rationality during our work lives, that we would talk comfortably about things that are measurable, that we would kind of allow for rationality to lead our discussions even on very emotional or philosophical or ethical questions, things like crime and punishment, things like economics. So we're comfortable with the things we can measure. And separated out the world of spirituality, the things that we can't measure, the things that we perhaps feel, our relationship with the people around us, our relationship to the divine if we're in that world. That world we would leave to our evenings or to our weekend communities, and we wouldn't bring it into, certainly not into the development realm or our professional lives. Now, as the world globalizes and we're more and more in contact with the rest of the world, what I think we have to recognize is that the rest of the world hasn't necessarily made that split, and maybe it's not a particularly healthy split. So that when we go out to do water resources development, for example, we focus on economic development. We focus on, in terms of metrics of success, we think about the things that we can measure in terms of economics or water quality, and we really don't think about the impacts on the fabric of a community or the societal health of a community, and certainly we don't think explicitly in spiritual terms. So that's what I mean by the rift, and I think as we go out to approach water resources development or water resources negotiations, it's worth remembering that there is a much more holistic way of thinking about these things, balancing rationality and spirituality, balancing self and community, that perhaps can help us engage more effectively.
And that division is obviously very sharp, and separation. Have you run into cases where you see the kind of light bulb go off and the aha moment where people start to understand why the spiritual questions may have an awful lot to do with the success or perhaps failure of these negotiations? Have been in the room when you've seen that go off?
Sure. I think most people who've been involved, certainly experienced mediators or facilitators, many when you talk to them about their experiences, they describe it much more in terms of the energy in a room, helping to unify the energy in a room, or helping people to think differently, or come to building the community in the room, if you will. Very few talk about it in rational terms, that we were able to create so many benefits. And certainly, as you mentioned, the aha moment is one that you really can't quantify. Everybody who's been in any kind of negotiations, from interpersonal within the family to international, knows when suddenly the entire room gets something profoundly differently. And that's the kind of thing I think it's useful to think outside of the rational world and think, are there lessons from the world of spiritual transformation or from other places where transformation happens, to think about how to craft settings that are more conducive to that kind of moment.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm sure it is not easy from a professional or disciplinary perspective to bring these two worlds together, but we hope you will continue to do that and share these really very practical insights of what is considered a very private world, or this spiritual world discussion. So thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you, Jim.